I'd like to just take a minute this morning to just talk about something that I know is really important to small children and youth. So just adults, be just patient for a minute. I want to talk about taxes. Now, if there's any, by the way, if there's anybody who works for Canada Revenue here today, or watching, or anyone who's, say, an accountant or does taxes for people or anything like that, please do not shout out how wrong I am. But basically, taxes, if you're little, and by that I mean by age, taxes are something you won't have to worry about for a while yet. A couple of years anyway. But taxes are basically money that you pay to the government so the government can take care of everybody. There are different ways you do that. But basically, it's money that you pay above and beyond everything else to the government so that the government can take care of everybody. Now, lots of adults have issues with that. They have issues about the whole having to pay them in the first place. Also have issues about how many you have to pay and how much you have to pay, and also what it gets spent on. It's just my opinion, but personally I think Jesus would say the idea of taxes is a really good thing, because the goal is for us each individually to contribute to the whole taking care of everyone. There are some flaws in that, in how we do it. And particularly today, one of those biggest flaws isn't exactly so much what you pay or don't, as the case may be, but what it gets spent on and how it's used. Let's not talk about that for now. The reason I mention it, though, isn't just because if you're young and small and you're wondering why your parents might be a little bit annoyed and confused at this time of year, it's because taxes are due soon. And also because of the number of times we hear a story in the Bible, especially in the Gospels, about Jesus hanging out with sinners and tax collectors. I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that it's quite frequently worded as tax collectors and sinners. And it sounds like either tax collectors are really good people and Jesus loves them, that's why they hang out with the sinners and Jesus, or tax collectors are sinners that are so bad they have their own category. And in Jesus' day, that was the case for many people. I want to be really careful how I say that, though, because for many people, they believed that, whether the tax collector was like that or actually not. But they believed that. And they had good reason to believe that, because in Jesus' day, taxes didn't work like they do now. Or not work as they're supposed to now. But they didn't work the same way. First of all, the Romans, who had conquered where Jesus lived, collected taxes to support Romans, not the people of that country. And they weren't very nice about it either, and they took way too much. Pretty much almost everything, in fact. And what they didn't take, the tax collector took. And the thing about the tax collector was a local person from where you live who was working for the Romans. So not only were they betraying your country to the Romans by working for them, but they were actually ripping you off as well. And so they got to be rich. And people did not like that. They were very unhappy about that. And that's why quite frequently when we hear stories of the Pharisees, the temple authorities, complaining about who Jesus hangs out with, because he hangs out with the wrong people, He hangs out with sinners and tax collectors because they're like the worst of the worst. The thing is, they're still people, though. And sure, maybe, just in case anyone's watching, maybe they're not as wonderful as the people who currently work for Canada Revenue. Please don't audit me. But they're still people. And they're people that you, in the community, that would be known. And they were hated. Just like sinners were. Remembering, of course, that it wasn't necessarily Jesus who judged them to be that. It was other people, particularly the temple authorities, the people who were supposedly in charge down at the temple and in your community. So today, given that things are different, don't you think it would be easier for us to remember sometimes that when we're really quick to judge people and to hate them, that we might want to just step back for a minute and remember that we're the ones who are doing the judging and not God. And that's a cool thing about Jesus, is that Jesus didn't judge people like that. That's why Jesus spent so much time with the tax collectors and sinners. Is because the only thing that Jesus knew about them really was that they were lost. They were disconnected from everyone else. They didn't have a place with everyone else in the community. Because the community had decided maybe the community should have a few second thoughts. Maybe the community should find out more. Maybe Jesus should find out more, just in case there is a really good reason. And that's why we have the stories, because he does. He does find out more. And we should too. Before we're too quick to judge people right away and decide there's something just because we put a label on them, or just because they associate with those people who we've already judged, maybe we should just take a moment and get to know them a little bit. Maybe we should take a moment and find out maybe why they do what they do. Maybe we should not be so quick to judge them and instead maybe help them because maybe they actually need something. That's what all the stories of Jesus are about, aren't they? Every time we hear that heads up, he's hanging out with tax collectors and sinners, you know we're about to hear a story where Jesus helped someone. Because he doesn't stop to judge them first. He just helps them with what they need. Maybe that would be a good thing for us to do too. You can't tax that.